Waves by C. Don McCallum. Chapter 3. Mia tried not to listen to the voices outside her tent. She tried to get the smell of tonight's fish dinner out of her nose. She wished they had enough grains left to make bread. She wished there were more ways to eat dried fruits. She wished for a lot of things, but mostly she wished the people sitting around the fire outside would stop talking and go to sleep. She watched the lamp's flame flicker wildly in the middle of the tent. Her body rocked back and forth, trying to match its rhythm. No matter how hard she tried, she couldn't lose herself in the light. The world never called her name in the night, and Gerlain would never love her. Then her mother's soft voice raised itself outside, and Mia had to listen. Seema was telling a story. Mia's body laid itself on her blankets, unable to resist the lull of the words she heard outside. The withering season ended and the family in the old house stirred, her mother said. There was no whispering now, no gossip behind raised hands. The crackling of the fire was the only other sound, unless people could also hear their own heartbeats. The family moved slowly after such a long rest. Their bodies needed the sleep after the harvest. The world had been generous to them, giving many fruits and much grain. The fish and dried foods that had sustained them all season were not enough any more. The renewal taking place outside knocked on their door. Wake up, the new season said. Come watch the tree push forth its fragrant buds. Come listen to the bird that sings there in its branches. A new season of the great tree is here. Enjoy it. Seema paused, but no one spoke. They knew she wasn't done. They'd heard this story 100 times, and they savored every word. The old house was overcome each withering season by blizzards. Every year, when the snows soaked into the ground or trickled off to the sea, the people in the house noticed a man dressed in rags and shouldering a heavy bag, walking toward their house. And every year, the father in the house clamored at the windows, ready to defend his home. He's coming to steal our things, the father said every year. No, he's coming to hide a treasure in the woods, the mother would say. No, he's a spy, the oldest child would say. He wants to tell the world our secrets. Pressing his face to the window to get a better look at the man, the youngest child would say, No, he's come to fix the damage the withering season did to the house. What? The father always said, storming out the door with the stick he'd used to poke the fire. I don't need help fixing anything, he told the man, waving the stick in the air. I built this house with my own hands. It is sturdy and will last forever. Even though the father hit the stranger all over his back shoulders with the stick, the man kept working. He replaced warped wood. He straightened shutters. He applied fresh paint while standing on a ladder. The stranger didn't listen to the yelling. He didn't heed the flailing stick. The man always managed to finish the repairs. Seeing the man's suffering, the mother set a cup of water near the ladder, though she never once tried to stop her husband or her oldest child who cheered his father on. Seeing the man's kindness and generosity in spite of his father's cruelty, the youngest child cried. Finding a hole in the floorboards, the youngest child crawled out under the house. Every year this happens. Every year the people in the house forgot that the man has come before. They forgot how he has helped them. Each year, a young child slips away to go away with the stranger. Outside, the villagers, without their village, were quiet around the fire. Mia closed her eyes and looked at the orange light. The flame burned onto her eyelids. Sliding her hand under her pillow, she pulled out the storybook and sat up. The book laid itself open in her hands, and she flipped to the picture that went with the story her mother just told. The little child dawdled behind the repairman, heading to the next house. Ever since she could remember, Mia wished she could be that child. She wanted to see where he was going. But she didn't know if she could leave her mother. The village needed her. It needed her hands. It needed her young womb. And she needed the village. She needed to see the fountain repaired, a new tree planted. The village had to start over, and she had to be there to help. They had to be their own repairmen. Mia remembered Gerlain smelling the book on the road. She fanned the old pages gently, setting free the scent that he loved. As the pages ran under her fingers, a piece of paper fell into her lap. Setting the book down, Mia unfolded the paper. Charcoal letters faced her in the lamplight. They were letters like Perla used to make when she practiced copying the stories. Mia scanned the pages, looking for matching letters. Page after page, she saw words that matched the one on Perla's page, but they were never in the exact order. Maybe this was a new story she was writing before her disappearance. Maybe the place where stories come from had sent her sister a new story to add to the book. A story of quakes, a story of a world's insatiable hunger when the sun wasn't looking. Why hadn't she tried to learn the letters like Perla did? She would have been able to read it so easily then. Gerlain? He could read some of the letters. Maybe he could tell her what Perla wrote. The villagers were standing outside now. Their talking became quiet farewells over the dying flame. Mia took one last look at the note, at the book on her lap, and hid her sister's words inside. She slipped the book back under her pillow, crawled under the blankets, and pretended to be asleep as her mother's hand pulled the tent flap aside. Tomorrow, before they headed to the old fountain, before anyone else awoke, Mia would go into the wilderness. She would find Gerlain. He would tell her the secret of her sister's words. Behind her eyelids, Mia could still see the lamplight flickering, bright and lovely. Mia closed the tent flap behind her and entered into the gray and lonely world outside. The fire pit lay dead from last night's dinner, and no one was around. Walking on the edge of the path to keep from crunching the road's pebbles, the soft ground chilled Mia's bare feet. She looked for shifting shadows in the darkness and listened for the sounds of others. Unless someone was being completely still like she was, no one else was up yet. Her toes growing numb, Mia headed for the field so she could put on her shoes. The ground would be broken soon, tilled and sowed with seed. It should have been done already, but there's been too much work and not enough hands to do it. The children were learning new things since the old school collapsed, things they wouldn't normally have to learn until much later. Mia sat where the crops would grow soon and slipped on her shoes. The starlight showed her the tops of the trees where Gerlain was hiding from the tent poles. Something in the pre-dawn breeze told her his name hadn't been called in the night. He was still out there. She could feel him. Mia pulled the old storybook out from under her belt and flipped it open. She wanted to make sure Perla's note was still there, that she hadn't left it behind. There wouldn't be time to go back and get it once she got across the field. The sun was already starting to show signs of itself on the horizon behind the school. She had to get to the wilderness. She had to find Gerlain so he would tell her what Perla had written. Grass and weeds grew on the site of last year's harvest. It'll be good to see the new sprouts pushing out of the soil, Mia thought, feeling her feet sink into the lumpy soil. Shivering, she made herself walk faster as the rising sun showed her the way. Coming to the edge of the wilderness, she looked into the shadowy land stretching out before her. She'd never been beyond the edge of the field before. She'd never wanted to. But now she had no choice. Her sister's last words were waiting to be heard, and the one who could tell her their meaning was somewhere in the strange world before her. Mia put a foot onto the twig entrance, and the ground cracked. Hollow, unfamiliar sounds lurked amid the trees, but she walked on. The void engulfed her with its unusual silence. She wondered how far into the trees Gerlain slept. Did he keep blankets out here? How did this empty place feel safer to him than the tent village? Thankful for the rising sun, Mia looked all around for signs of Gerlain. The ground was different here, and there was no clear path. She would have to make her own way until she found him, wherever he was. What if he didn't even come out here last night? What if the world had called his name while she slept in the tent, Perla's message hidden away under her head, unread and unknown? Mia walked faster. Gerlain, she called into the nothingness that stretched out as far as the light would allow her to see. No, she told herself, he's out here. She'll find him, and he'll tell her what she wants to know. Unless a wolf got him. He said he saw one out here yesterday. She had no reason not to believe him. Mia felt the book growing moist. Her heart rose to her throat, and she stopped to see if she could hear any movement. He's out here. I know it. But so are the wolves. Mia thought she felt the ground trembling under her, but it was just her knees. Calm down, she thought, heading to the nearest tree. She pressed her back up against it and looked back to the field, the old village. Oranges and reds burst out of the horizon, slitting open the sky with some unseen sword. She should go back. Gerlain would come to the village later. She'd ask him then. She was crazy to come out here. Mia saw people moving in the tent village. She could go now. She could say she was drawn to the wilderness in the night, that she woke up out there and didn't know how she got there. She could say she was led to the book in the night. Think of how happy they'd be to have the book back so they could read it to each other after working all day. Setting her sights on the stream of people just starting to trickle to the broken fountain, to the dying tree, she pushed herself off the tree. At first, she thought the cracking sound on the ground came from her feet. Maybe it echoed off of something. But then she saw it. A wolf, its blue eyes looking right into her. She froze. Now she knew she would fall to the ground. Please let a quake come. Something. Anything. Mia was too scared to notice how fast her heart was beating, how her head felt so hot in the cool morning. She touched the book, but she couldn't move anything else. Go away, a voice said. Was that me? Mia wondered. Did I speak? Did I yell at the wolf? No, her voice was dead in her throat. That voice belonged to someone else. A stick flew across her line of sight. Go away, the voice cried again as the wolf jumped back. Gerlain. He was here. He'd come to save me, she thought. Mia watched the wolf walk sideways, watching the wild boy with eyes like his. The wild beast trotted off into its mysterious world. Out of the corner of her eye, she saw Gerlain's hand reach out to her. Come on, he said. Unable to move, she stood shaking. Let's go, he whispered, seeing her fear. His hand wrapped around hers and pulled her to the edge of the wilderness, to the field. They walked on to the untilled soil, looking back for signs of the wolf. He was gone. The rest of the villagers would be emerging from their tents, soon heading to the fountain for the calling of the names. Gerlain let go of Mia's hand, and they walked to the road as fast as they could. They didn't want to get caught. What were you doing out there? He asked, scanning the road outside the tent village for any signs of people. Mia pulled the storybook out from under her belt. I thought you put it back, he cried. That was the plan, Mia. That's why we went over there yesterday. His steps got quicker. I was going to, she explained. But when I thought of burying it out there, like some dead thing, I couldn't do it. Gerlain didn't say anything. He just looked ahead at the people on the road. And last night, I was flipping through the pages and found this. Mia opened the book and pulled out the piece of paper marked with charcoal lettering. Gerlain took it from her hand and opened it. I think Perla wrote it, she said. Staring at the letters with a hunger to understand, to look again into Perla's eyes, to be near her again, Gerlain read the note. His breathing was fast and his chest rose as if he'd been running. I came out here to find you, so you can tell me what it said, Mia said. He didn't seem to hear her as his eyes ran over the words again. Then his head jerked up. Squinting, he looked over the field. He looked under their feet with eyes full of terror. What? What does it say? Mia asked. Gerlain was shaking. The field, he said, grabbing her hand and walking fast to the road. She thought the mouth of the world was in the field. They looked over the ground for signs of the mouth lips, saliva, anything as they went. All they saw was the unworked soil and weeds that seemed to grab at the ankles as they wavered in the wind. Mia's knees shook, and she heard a noise from the tents. The flap of Mencha's tent flew back, and Ulsa came out, her hand on the old woman's elbow. People were coming out on the road. The book, Gerlain said, folding the note and slipping it into his pocket. Put it away. He let go of her hand, and she shoved the storybook back under her belt. Her heart was loud in her ears. She breathed fast, but couldn't catch her breath. From the road, Mencha saw them walking up from the field. The woman stopped her slow walk to the morning, calling at the fountain, and stared at them. There's no way out of this now, Mia thought. What are you two doing out there? Mensha cried in her raspy voice. Mia opened her mouth to speak, but Gerlain grabbed her shoulder and squeezed it. I'll do the talking, he seemed to say. I saw Mia wandering near the wilderness before the dawn. She was sleepwalking. I was just taking her back to her tent. Mensha furrowed her brow in disbelief. Mia, is this true? Mia was afraid to answer. She didn't want to lie. She'd already stolen the storybook. She didn't know what to do. She didn't say a word, but her trembling head and scared eyes must have given Mensha an answer that the woman was happy with. The old woman's hand reached out for Mia, summoning her to her side. Well, at least this will get you to the fountain, Mensha said to him. It would do you good to show the villagers some respect and not make us worry like you do, especially your mother. Mensha looked back at the tent village and the people coming out. Gerlain's mother, Tora, stepped out, her tired eyes squinting at the emerging sunlight. Go to her, Gerlain. Give your mother comfort. It's the least you can do. Mensha turned and walked toward the fountain, Ulsa and Mia on either side. Behind her, Mia could hear more people coming out. She looked back and waved to her mother on the road. What happened? Her mother's look asked as she tried to catch up to them. Before she looked back around, Mia caught a glimpse of Gerlain. The boy stared at the field, entranced and searching. Thank you for listening to Chapter 2 of Waves by C. Don McCallum. If you're enjoying this story, please consider sharing it with someone you know, and please like the video and subscribe to this channel to help others discover these stories.